Everybody has a right to be themselves. Everybody has their own path and their own road to walk, and everybody's talent is different.
5 months before she died, an 80-year-old woman posted a photo of herself grinning at her own theme park and captioned it with 4 words her fans had been begging to hear: "I ain't dead yet." 5 months later, she was. The woman the internet had killed in a dozen hoaxes finally, quietly, actually went on a Tuesday in a Nashville hospital surrounded by her family. And the fortune she left behind is going to make the people who loved her cry. Not because of what they're fighting over, because of what she made sure they'd never have to. On August 25, 2026, Dolly Parton died at the Vanderbilt Ingram Cancer Center in Nashville. She was 80 years old. Her team later confirmed the cause was a brief battle with cancer. But here's the detail almost nobody caught. The world didn't find out from a network or a press release or a leak. It found out from her nephew, Brian Seaver, in a video posted to Dolly's own Instagram. It was a video he later revealed she had asked him to make years earlier before he could even absorb it as a real possibility.
Hey everyone, my name is Brian Seaver, son of Cassie Parton, and I'm representing the Parton and Owens family today, announcing the passing of my Aunt Dolly Rebecca Parton Dean, sister, sis, Aunt Granny to one generation and Gigi to the next. This video announcement is something Dolly asked of me years ago, before I fully absorbed it as a future reality.
She wrote her own goodbye. She cast the messenger. She controlled the last scene the way she'd controlled every scene for 60 years. For a woman who'd spent the last stretch of her life batting away death rumors with a smile, telling fans in March she'd just been worn down and worn out, telling people only days before the end that she was still healin' and still working, the real announcement felt impossible to process. She had joked more than once that she'd gone from queen of the tabloids to queen of social media AI, and then it was true, and there was no punchline. Within hours, tributes came from Reba McEntire, Lily Tomlin, and dozens more. The president ordered flags lowered, calling her something there had never been and never would be again. And then the question every financial publication scrambled to answer: what did she actually leave behind, and who on earth gets it when she had no children and no living husband? The headline figure is about $450 million. That's Forbes, which ranked her among America's richest self-made women and pegged her there in mid-2025. But that number comes with an asterisk, and honest coverage should say so. Celebrity net worth put her closer to $650 million. Nobody outside her estate knows the real figure because the 2 biggest pieces of her wealth aren't cash. They're a song catalog and a slice of a theme park, and both are notoriously hard to price. Start with the catalog. Dolly wrote more than 3,000 songs, not recorded. Wrote Jolene, 9 to 5, Coat of Many Colors, I Will Always Love You. Forbes valued that catalog at roughly $120 million, and unlike most artists of her generation, she never sold it. She held the copyrights until the day she died, which means it keeps earning through streaming, licensing, film, and television, long after the woman who wrote it is gone. Then there's Dollywood. In 1986, Parton went into business with Hershin Family Enterprises and turned a struggling attraction called Silver Dollar City into a park bearing her own name. Today it draws around 3 million visitors a year and anchors the entire tourism economy of the Smoky Mountains. But Dollywood, and this matters for the inheritance question, is a partnership, not a piece of jewelry. It can't simply be handed to a relative. Where her economic interest goes depends on trusts and ownership agreements the public has never seen. Add the rest: royalties, book income, a fragrance line, a Broadway-bound musical, a Nashville hotel and museum she was building right up to the end. It's a real fortune. The interesting part is who it was built for. Dolly Parton had no children. She married Carl Dean in 1966, secretly, in Ringgold, Georgia, because her label wanted her to look single. They stayed married for nearly 60 years, almost entirely out of the public eye. He ran an asphalt paving business and famously avoided the spotlight so completely that some fans doubted he existed. Carl died in March 2025, more than a year before Dolly. When he passed, his will named her the sole beneficiary of his estate, but it also mentioned the extended family they'd built their lives around. Carl had 5 nieces and nephews. Dolly had 14. Because that's the thing about Dolly. She was one of 12 children, raised dirt poor in a one-room cabin in the mountains of East Tennessee. Family wasn't sentiment to her, it was structure. 5 of her younger siblings lived with her and Carl for years. She raised nieces and nephews. She built businesses that employed them. And when a woman with no children and a 9-figure fortune dies, the vultures usually circle. Dolly saw that coming decades away. Back in 2020, she told Billboard plainly that she'd been getting her estate in order, that she would not leave that mess to somebody else, and that every artist should do the same before it was too late. So the tears her family is crying right now aren't over a contested will. As of the day after her death, no public estate filing had named a single heir because she engineered it that way. The most likely truth is that most of it flows into the institutions she spent her life building, structures designed to outlast any one person. Which means the fortune that makes her family cry is the realization that she'd already thought of all of them, quietly, years ago, and pointed the rest at children who'll grow up on her books and never know it was her money. But to understand why she'd do that, you have to go back to the cabin. Dolly Rebecca Parton was born on January 19, 1946, in Locust Ridge in Sevier County, Tennessee. Her father paid the doctor who delivered her with a sack of cornmeal. The family was, in her own word, dirt poor. 12 kids, a cabin with no plumbing. Her father, Robert Lee Parton, was, by every account of hers, the smartest man she ever knew, and he could not read or write. He'd quit school to work the farm, and his illiteracy shadowed his whole life. Dolly would spend her adulthood trying to make sure no child grew up the way her father had. Music was the one thing the mountains gave away for free. She was writing songs before she could properly spell, singing in church, performing on Knoxville radio and television as a child. The day after she graduated high school in 1964, the first in her family to do it, she got on a bus to Nashville with everything she owned. She was overlooked, underestimated, and constantly told her look was a joke. She leaned into all of it. "I'm not offended by dumb blonde jokes," she'd say, "because I know I'm not dumb. I also know I'm not blonde." Nobody who laughed at her in those first Nashville years understood they were laughing at one of the shrewdest business minds the industry would ever produce. Her break came from Porter Wagoner, who put her on his syndicated TV show in 1967 as his singing partner. It made her a name across the South. It also boxed her in. She was reportedly earning around $60,000 a year, while Wagoner cashed in on her rising fame, and he did not want to let her go solo. By 1974, she'd made up her mind to leave, and she did the most Dolly thing imaginable. Instead of arguing, she wrote him a song. "I Will Always Love You" was a goodbye letter to the man who discovered her and wouldn't release her. It went to #1 on the country charts. That decision, to leave, would collide years later with the single smartest business call of her career. And that call is the whole reason the money exists. Elvis Presley wanted to record "I Will Always Love You." For a girl from a Tennessee cabin, there was no bigger dream. Dolly said she told everyone she knew. The king was going to sing her song. She was invited to the studio to be there when he did. Then, the afternoon before the session, she got a call from Elvis's manager, Colonel Tom Parker. The condition was simple. Elvis would only record it if Dolly signed over half the publishing rights. That was standard practice. Parker took a cut of nearly everything Elvis touched. It was simply the price of the king's voice. Dolly said no. Her reasoning was pure Locust Ridge. That money was meant for her family, her brothers, her sisters, her nieces and nephews, and she couldn't give away half of it. She has said she cried all night. She was certain she'd just thrown away the biggest opportunity of her life. Elvis never recorded the song. Dolly kept 100% of the publishing. Then, in 1992, Whitney Houston recorded it for The Bodyguard. Houston's version spent 14 weeks at #1 and became one of the best-selling singles in history, and every cent of the songwriting royalties flowed to the woman who'd refused to sign them away 20 years earlier. By some estimates, it earned her around $10 million in the decade that followed alone. She later joked it brought in enough to buy Graceland, the irony being about as thick as it gets. She reinvested a chunk of it into a black neighborhood in Nashville, calling the property "the house that Whitney built." One tearful no to the most powerful men in music funded a theme park's growth, a community, and a fortune still paying out today. It's the clearest window into who she was. She protected what was hers, and then she gave it away on her own terms. Here's the part that reframes the entire estate. In 1995, inspired directly by her illiterate father, Dolly started the Imagination Library, mailing a free, age-appropriate book every month to any child from birth to age 5, regardless of family income. It began in her home county. By the time she died, it had shipped more than 300 million books, reaching children across all 50 states and 5 countries. Her father told her, before he passed, that it was probably the most important thing she'd ever done. In April 2020, she donated $1 million to Vanderbilt for coronavirus research, money that helped fund the critical early stages of what became the Moderna COVID-19 vaccine. When she got her own shot, she filmed it and sang "Vaccine, Vaccine, Vaccine" to the tune of Jolene. That wasn't a one-off. $1 million to Vanderbilt's Children's Hospital in honor of a niece treated for leukemia. Another $1 million in 2022 for pediatric infectious disease research. $1 million toward Hurricane Helene relief in East Tennessee, matched by her own companies. Full college tuition for Dollywood employees. In 2022, she received the Carnegie Medal of Philanthropy, what some call the Nobel Prize of Giving. She explained it as simply as she explained everything. She just saw a need, and if she could fill it, she did. So when you ask what happens to Dolly Parton's fortune, the honest answer is that she'd been answering that question with her checkbook for 30 years. The estate isn't the story. The estate is the leftover. The record is staggering. 11 Grammys. Over 100 million records sold. A catalog she never let out of her hands. A theme park that saved a region. The world's largest early childhood book program. A place in the Country Music Hall of Fame. A Kennedy Center honor. And a rare crossover appeal that made her beloved across every political line in a country that agrees on almost nothing. As of now, the beneficiaries of her estate have not been made public, and there may be no dramatic reveal at all because she spent years making sure there wouldn't be a fight. What can be said with confidence is that she did not want the empire she built to become a battlefield for the family she loved. The fortune is real. The song catalog, the Dollywood stake, the royalties, the properties, all of it is real. And it's being sorted out right now among the people and institutions she chose. But the reason her family is crying isn't the size of the number, it's that a girl whose father couldn't read his own name grew up, made a fortune the world's most powerful men tried to take a cut of, and spent it teaching other people's children to read, and made sure, before she ever got sick, that no one she loved would be left to fight over what was left. Drop a Dolly song in the comments, the one that got you through something. Because the numbers will be argued over for months, but the thing she actually left behind isn't in any estate filing. It's in 300 million books, and it's in you.